Good morning, and thanks for taking the time to join us on today's Housing Hive, the June session. Hopefully the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so will be useful. We will be exploring Housing Solutions self-service app, which was, I suppose, started with a web-based portal and sort of a few pieces of development in the middle, and then we're now working on the app side of things with those guys as well. We are joined by Adam as well from Housing Solutions, so we'll run through some intros shortly and talk about Adam's position, and been very, very instrumental in the project from start to finish so far as well. So we'll talk about that experience too. But yeah, for those of you who are new today, I just skipped forward load, sorry about that. We'll go through some introductions. Feel free to use the chat pane. We will actually stay on mute if that's okay, because we do record these sessions and sort of post them later on for people to sort of catch up on later on or look back onto. So background noise is something we look to try and avoid if we can, but we are here in the chat pane or here to answer any questions towards the end if you'd like to pose any to myself, to the Prodo team, or even to Adam at Housing Solutions as well. But yeah, we'll obviously cover today's topic and then Q&A sort of towards the end if you do have any. But yeah, just I suppose to start with introductions, we'll be very quick with these. So my name's Jacob. For those of you who don't know me already, I probably know a few of you and met a few of you already. I'm head of sales here at Prodo. So my job and my team's role here at the organisation is to consult with housing associations essentially and sort of look to connect them with the rest of the Prodo team to align some products and services, look to navigate digital transformation in all of this different sort of ways which it can be navigated through. And I will hand over to the rest of the Prodo team to introduce themselves. Probably start with yourself, Claire, because I think you've probably spoken with everyone on the call, I would have thought, at some point.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm Business Development Manager here at Prodo. I've worked here for 18 years. And as Jacob said, a lot of you know me from when I invited you to our monthly housing hives, which we started in lockdown. And my role here is I work closely with Jacob, nurturing new opportunities in the business development team. So thanks for coming along, everyone, this morning.
18 years in, Claire. That's nice to join us today.
Long time.
Go on then, Joe.
Hi, morning everyone. I'm Joe. I'm one of the account managers here at Prodo, working in the client services team. So work alongside my colleagues Liv and Jenny Bradshaw. And yeah, get to work with lots of our lovely housing association clients. And lovely to have you all on the call this morning. Liv, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. How do we follow the famous Claire? I'm Liv. I'm an account director here at Prodo. My job is to work really closely with our clients to work on their digital roadmaps and think about good solutions. And the app is obviously a popular conversation with a lot of clients. One of my clients, Allwell, has also launched the app as well. So it's really exciting to have Adam join us and hear more about it.
Great stuff. Thanks, Liv. Yeah, we've got yourself with us today, Adam. I don't know if you want to say a quick hello, bit of an introduction to yourself and your position at Housing Solutions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Rigg. I'm IT Digital Analyst at Housing Solutions, and I help develop projects such as mobile apps here, web chat, kind of digital offerings really that we do here at Housing Solutions.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to join us today, Adam, as well. It's great to have you here with us. Very quick intro to Prodo as a whole for those you don't know as well. We are essentially digital transformation specialists in the housing space, and we've been doing so for over 20 years. And if you think about what Claire just said in terms of 18 years here at Prodo, she's sort of managed a lot of that and sort of spearheaded a lot of it anyway. But yeah, we've worked with hundreds of housing associations across that time, and the types of things which we've sort of done across that time has evolved as the sector's needs have changed and digital transformation has progressed as a whole generally. So that's kind of where we fit into the housing space. We do record all of the webinars as well, so if you do have to jump off today, or if you want to share this with somebody internally that may be of interest, feel free to pop over to our video hub, and we'll publish it probably later today, or if not tomorrow, and email you all the link to that. And there is a bunch of all sorts of things in there as well, from all sorts of different topics. We did a couple on cost of living, we've done digital inclusion, website sustainability, and all sorts of different things. So feel free to jump in and have a little look at those. But yeah, I suppose onto today's topic then. So as we always do, like to sort of start with, if not a definition, a little bit of background around the topic that we're going to discuss. So today, obviously being apps, we kind of take apps for granted generally now these days in terms of being a big part of our day-to-day lives, from the likes of banking, retail, obviously social media being a huge part of that as well. But on the whole, mobile device technology and usage has accelerated hugely, hasn't it, across that time, and certainly over the last few years. It was actually invented, the first mobile app, and also, what is that on the screen? BlackBerry. It's been a while, hasn't it? The first smartphone app itself was created by IBM in '93. Not to make anyone feel old, but that would have made me 1 year old, and I think Claire only about 15 years into a time at Prodo. But yeah, it launched its smartphone soon after with things like what you'd expect: the phone book, the clock, the calendar, calculator. And then following that was things like sort of gaming apps as well, like Snake. Obviously, we all remember very, very well, delivered by Nokia in '97. The next sort of big change was when the BlackBerry was first introduced in '02, followed by the iPhone, which obviously changed a hell of a lot of things around that time in '07. And then the app stores started around '08 as well. So iPhone '07, iOS sort of app store in '08, and also Android just sort of following that as well. So obviously things have changed a hell of a lot in that time, and it doesn't really feel that long ago. But now it's such a big part of today's everyday life, from business, but also sort of personal, just sort of general sort of life management, isn't it, as well, in terms of the popularity of it. In terms of some stats around this, the popularity of apps is obviously no secret. They tend to have the edge over websites in some scenarios in terms of ease of access, user experience, provenance on the device itself, and general sort of usability, certainly for transactional side of things. But yeah, 16.2 billion smartphone devices across the planet today, 218 billion app installs, and also 5.4 million apps available across the Apple and Google Play stores. I suppose when we talk about this from a housing angle, it's obviously the case that a lot of your customers in the housing space will be making use or benefiting from self-service platforms, usually driven by web to sort of begin with. That was obviously the main thing we were all talking about sort of 10 years or so ago, and they've kind of stayed consistent throughout. Obviously, it's the case of, we usually talk about the big two being rent and repairs, and there's obviously a lot of things that sort of surround that now as well, around antisocial behaviour or even applying for properties. But yeah, those sort of web portals have obviously carried great benefit across the years, but when it comes to sort of meeting today's customer expectations, that's why we're sort of moving more towards apps generally, really. Obviously very, very widely used across different industries and sectors already. But I suppose, as we mentioned earlier, we're joined by Adam, and Adam's introduction into the sort of the IT digital analyst, at Housing Solutions. Former futurologist as well at Red Kite Housing, I hear as well, Adam. So very sort of focused in the digital side of space, what might be happening next, but also delivering on what's happening now for Housing Solutions as well. So you might want to elaborate on this for me, but a little bit of a brief intro into Housing Solutions. Established in 1995, own and manage sort of between 8,000 and 9,000 properties, I believe. With quite a wide range of sort of tenure types and property types, but also there's 450 plus new homes have been built over the next 5 years or so. Anything further to add, Adam, in terms of a Housing Solutions overview that you think might be relevant at this point?
Not really, only that we're quite a kind of forward-thinking bunch really here, so it's great working with Prodo. I think you guys share our ethos in that, and kind of digital first kind of ethos that we have. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell, though. You've pretty much got us there.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I definitely agree with that in terms of the being open and sort of willing to explore digital in many ways is certainly sort of sums you guys up in terms of relationship we have with you as well, which is great for us and great for you guys, and also the rest of the sector as well, because as we know, housing associations will sometimes wait to see something working before sort of moving into it themselves. So no, that's really great. In terms of the journey so far, we've been working with Housing Solutions for a number of years now, since 2016, where we began the partnership. First sort of project delivered was publicly accessible website, and then the extensions to the website being the customer portal with integrations. Kind of continued across that time period, really, in terms of learning from insights, performance, and user behaviours to improve things and sort of continue to develop things over that time. And then we moved into exploring AI with Housing Solutions as well, around the boiler check sort of service, which is incorporated into the portal, which we'll build upon and sort of elaborate on later. But yeah, what we're here to talk more about today is the app, really, which was launched last year, and is sort of the main focal point in terms of developments moving forward as part of this relationship too. But I suppose just to start with, the customer portal being web-based, Adam, would it like be safe to say that's sort of been quite a key driver in terms of channel shift for Housing Solutions, in terms of general sort of digital engagement and adoption with your customer base?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We know we want to get our customers to interact with us digitally. So yeah, we did start with the portal there, and then move on to the app, offering kind of similar functionality, but different channels for different demographics of our customer base.
Yeah.
But yeah, portal's really good. We have a lot of, as I think you'll see on a later slide, we have a decent engagement level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think from a functionality point of view on the web portal, it's kind of what you'd expect, really, isn't it? It's what we talk about a lot today in housing portals. From obviously the sort of the user authentication with integrations into the internal systems, account balances, online payments, and everything sort of around repairs and things like that as well. And yeah, you rightly put it, it's kind of replicating aspects of that in the app, isn't it, as well? But I guess generally sort of building upon that with those device specific functions as well. But yeah, the Show Is Your Boiler campaign was an interesting one, which was, I think, around, it may have been part way through lockdown, certainly around sort of pre-winter, sort of prepare for that rush, I suppose, of potential boiler problems or heating issues which may be raised. But yeah, the first iteration of this was boiler identification, which was the first iteration of our AI-based functionality, which we can offer these days as well. How did that pave the way for Explorer mobile apps, Adam, in terms of making use of the AI function in like quite a conversational manner, or?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, it was actually before my time, the boiler AI thing, but it obviously it did pave the way for further development later on when we were talking about AI repairs, which we delved into when we were first developing the mobile app with you guys. So yeah, I guess it's the same kind of same functionality really that uses the same AI kind of image recognition software. Yeah, but
absolutely,
yeah, it was popular, I think, with the boiler.
I remember at the time of this, when we sort of incorporated it, as well as sort of preparing for the influx of the heating potential related problems which may be reported as part of that sort of pre-winter and winter period. It was also the case of sort of building that asset management database as well with the likes of this AI tool, because we were receiving lots and lots of images of properties and with that sort of throughout that stock as well. So I suppose twofold in terms of potential benefits around that. But yeah, I suppose that kind of, for us, working with you guys, kind of led into the next step, which will be the app. But yeah, I think this was 2021 when we first started exploring this, and some of the features we'll come onto in the following slides. But I think it's worth noting that since talking to other housing associations fairly recently as well around app projects, it's quite important for us to have a web angle associated to this to manage certain things around it, because the administration of an app is very, very different to just having a web portal which sort of comes with an admin panel attached. So part of the app functions and controllers are controlled in Umbraco CMS, which is obviously hooked into the portal. And I think going forwards now as a partnership, what we're looking at is essentially agnostic digital development. So the functionality is in a way replicated across both. Obviously, some will have nuances compared to the others, but as an experience from a front-end user, you can interact with the portal or download the app, and it's quite consistent in terms of that agnostic nature. So whichever's preferred, I suppose. But yeah, the app, which we'll come on to now, obviously carries a little bit further in terms of possible device-specific functionality as well, which we'll delve into now. So obviously, integrated experience, we've touched upon already the web-based portal being integrated, and it's very key for us to sort of maintain that for the app experience as well, because that's how we not only authenticate the user when they register to make sure that it is a Housing Solutions tenant which has downloaded and sort of tried to register using the app. It'd probably be a bit of a strange scenario if someone who wasn't a customer tried to do so, but we need to make sure that's the right people. And obviously, when they are in there, it's a case of servicing that account personalized, specific or property specific information to the user. So it's true self-service experience, and any sort of interactions or transactions are passed straight back through into those systems to sort of execute internal processes. But I know certain things are changing for that around you guys at the moment with different systems and things, Adam. So is there any sort of anything you want to add in terms of the internal process that are executed via the self-service app, or anything around sort of systems from an integration point of view that you could touch on?
Yeah, I think it's some good points you made there. I think it's important, and something that we certainly learned when we've been developing the app is to not develop it and not think about it on its own, because there is a lot of other systems that are feeding in and out of it, and also things that you're developing at the same time. And if you don't have kind of an internal kind of timeline, a plan set out in advance of developing an app, you quickly run into things where you realize, oh, that's not going to work with that, that's not going to feed into that, and how do we want things to match up with our other channels. So yeah, I think it's important to internally, not just dealing with you guys, but just internally as well. If anyone's thinking about developing an app, just try and have a kind of a broad vision of your other systems as well. Things like your web chat, your online portal, even your traditional contact channels as well. Have a broad think about all of those and how it's going to work long term with your app, and kind of try and work backwards. That's what we've learned, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, to be fair. I think it's one of the sort of the themes in our book, actually, around that sort of planning phase for it. You have to sort of acknowledge and accept that there's got to be an element of flexibility in there, don't you? Because it's not a bridge that we're building in terms of the delivery. It was very, very clear in terms of what it's going to do, and the output is quite consistent. I suppose when you're dealing with multiple different systems and different types of users using it from internal, but also end users on the front end as well, in terms of customers, systems might change, priorities might alter over time, business priorities may change. So yeah, I think that flexibility in terms of working backwards from that end goal that you just mentioned is definitely appropriate. Is that something you found, Liv, in terms of, you spoke about a couple of your clients sort of making use of self-service web portals, but also apps as well, in terms of planning those in?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's as you say, super important to have a holistic view of everything that you're offering, and actually what channels are most relevant for what inquiries, and making sure that those are optimized for those inquiries. I think a lot of the feedback that we get is that certain elements of the self-service journey are better than others. So, for example, feedback on the app that we've had is it saves them time in terms of reporting a repair, and it's very easy, user-friendly. And obviously, when people have the option to go down two different routes, either a portal or an app, it depends at what point of their day or their, what they have access to at that time. So if I'm on a bus and I think, oh, my tap's leaking and I forgot to report that, it's much easier to go down the app route than it is to go down the portal route, for example, on your phone, and it's a quick and easy solution. So it's about offering people the right solution at the right time based on their time and time of the day. Yes.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's customer need based, essentially, sort of capturing as much of that as possible, I guess. But when it comes to, we kind of touched upon the web portal key functions before and features. Where the app sort of differs is that there's the things like biometric login. So after we talked about authentication and login before of the registration process, obviously that's quite consistent and quite similar for a web experience, other than sort of saving your credentials in the browser to sort of maybe get around having to remember the password. But I guess that biometric login is something we're all quite familiar with using these days with apps. I use it all the time, so much so I keep forgetting passwords when I can't use it. But yeah, it's a case of Face ID, fingerprint ID, just to remove that sort of potential blocker to getting in, I suppose. It can be a bit of a pain, can't it, in terms of, I know this is, talking about a problem which is, there's a lot worse things out there, but when you're looking to log into something and you have to go away, reset the password through email and think of something new and then remember it again and go back in, try and log in, it is a pain, and it may produce a blocker which may push somebody just to get on the phone to sort of report something. So again, that biometric login is really important. I suppose the other sort of key difference is the push notification side of things as well. So we talked about there, Liv, some examples of, you mentioned, if someone's out and about potentially. I suppose managing accounts and sort of interacting with digital platforms is, on the app, you can sort of manage certain things, or at least be familiar with what's going on outside of the app itself with push notifications, can't you? So without even having to log in, without even having to make use of biometrics or sort of reset the password, you'll know, you're not moving into arrears, or your direct debit has gone through. You do have a repairs appointment of 3 to 5 days, whatever it might be, in terms of push notification as well, which really helps.
I think to add to that, I think another thing is that it can help with data health. So if you were kind of on an initiative to ensure everybody's contact details are up to date, you can kind of send them a notification. I think you're much more likely to do those quick changes on your phone than you would be potentially on if you had to log in and then, potentially on a desktop or whatever you wanted to do. It's a lot easier to do it on the app. So from a data health point of view, there's benefits there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, time is precious for everybody these days, isn't it? And although we might think, sitting down to your laptop or iPad or whatever to take that small step to log in is sometimes that extra barrier that people just don't want to take. So when it is there at your fingertips on your mobile, it is just makes everything much easier and much smoother for the user.
Yeah. Is there any specific feedback that you've had, Adam, from an app versus web perspective, or any particular functions or features that you've heard anything about from customers that you could share?
Yeah, I think generally the feedback is we get more positive feedback on the mobile app than the portal, perhaps. Obviously, different people, different demographic using the app versus the portal, and some use both, I think. But yeah, generally positive, more on the app. I would say we have more issues around the rent kind of stuff. So that's generally where the issues come. The repairs kind of stuff generally works quite well. So we get positive on that. And I mean, to be honest, 90% of what residents actually want to do is pay their rent, check how much they've paid and report repairs. The other 10% is kind of the stuff perhaps that they don't know they want yet, and all the kind of cool, ambitious stuff that we want to do with it.
Yeah. So have you seen that specific demographic change, and have you in terms of that remit of customers using the app versus web? Have you in terms of segmented customers, or is there a difference there that you mentioned there? That's interesting.
I think there is, but I mean, I think you can generalize too much sometimes with that kind of stuff because everybody's different, aren't they? I mean, if I was to generalize, I would say probably a younger demographic use mobile than use the web version. But that probably is a bit of a generic statement because I've met older residents that are more than capable of downloading an app and are fully to grips with that. But yeah, in general, that's kind of general.
Would have thought so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Great. Okay. And then I suppose onto that repairs thing, which you mentioned working really quite well from an end-to-end repairs process. I think the way we kind of see the repairs side of things is that where possible, we'll always try to consult with our housing association client down the route of being able to enable appointments to be booked, which I know is the case for you guys in terms of selecting repair type, confirming the booking, but also potentially scheduling a repair as well with that internal integration on the repair side of things.
Yeah, so as it says, it is end to end for us. So and it does work really well. I think we took the approach to try and keep it as simple as possible for the customer. So as you can see, I think in the screenshot there, you've got four headings, and then there's probably a few headings underneath those. It's literally, I think I timed it once. I think I made a video when we were promoting it. I think you can do an end-to-end repairs in about 30 to 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's not even doing it particularly quick. That's just an average. It's super easy to do it.
Yeah.
End-to-end. Yeah, it's exactly what you want as a customer. You don't want to have to log in and select 4 different drop downs and then mess around with time slots and stuff. It's just super quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen the categorization of those repair types of diagnostics done a few different ways in the past, but I think drilling those down to 4 key types with some specifics underneath is only going to help, isn't it? Because it's when you've got a problem in the house, you've probably got a good idea of which one of those 4 it may sort of fall into, making, I suppose, with some terminology nuances maybe around it. But no, I didn't know that you've done that recording of that sort of process being quite quick. So that's really good. Great to hear. I know there's certain things that we kind of explored and we're looking to bring back in, I suppose, around AI in terms of repairs as well. So we'll come on to that shortly too. But no, really good to hear. And then, I've kind of touched upon the communication side of things already, but it's that example I mentioned whereby sort of managing the account or at least receiving updates outside of the app, which is very much how I sort of manage my banking app myself. I'll rarely log in and sort of carry out any actions. I'll just consume the notifications to know that payment's gone through successfully or payment in has gone through successfully, which is always nice to see, isn't it, at the end of the month? But yeah, it saves you having to sort of log in. And again, it's another sort of level of that comms, isn't it? So I suppose level one being face-to-face, having to go into the office to ask something or report something. Next one being over the phone. Both of those things will carry sort of weight and also internal effort to sort of facilitate. The next one being logging into the web portal, which requires, you know, opening the browser, navigating to the URL, logging in and reporting the repair. The app itself is that sort of a next level, I suppose, isn't it, in terms of not even having to log in or do anything. It's just a case of receive notification, consume it, and then carry action if you need to. But also the other comms channels in there, Adam, around sort of the live chat, and I know there's a chat bot which kind of is sort of prior to the live chat angle, which is that used quite heavily in the app, or are you finding that more web-based, or how's that for you?
Yeah, it seems to be more web-based, I think. I guess because a lot of the time people are using the web chat, they're wanting to do something. So they'll want to be, for example, paying their rent or raising a repair. So once they're in the app, it's very easy to do that. So they don't then need to use the chat to contact us to ask how to do it. So although it's in there and it works very well, as you can see the screenshot, it's probably more useful on the portal version, the desktop version.
We kind of talk a little bit about user behavior differences between web and app as well. I think when you're in the app, it's a little bit, you're probably expecting to spend a little bit less time in there, aren't you? It's a case of having something very, very specific you want to do, jumping in, getting it done, and maybe sort of leaving again. So yeah, maybe that could, I suppose, go some way towards maybe the chat's more suited to web, but certainly there if people need to use it in the app as well. But yeah, I know a lot of people on the call are probably quite interested to hear about some results as well. So since we've launched the portal all those years ago, there's been a steady increase over time in terms of uptake utilization. The results have been really, really strong as well. But yeah, Adam, I wonder if you had any more around the impact the self-service platforms have had and what the sort of driver behind going down the mobile app has been for you guys, whilst you had quite a well-performing web portal in place.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the figures don't tell the whole story, do they? And although our figures are improving, 39% of tenancies actively using self-service channels is the one that I would focus on there, because the 72% is perhaps not, it doesn't tell the whole story. I think we like to look at who's actively using it. You know, we've had quite a lot of downloads, but that doesn't necessarily mean everyone's using it. A lot of time people download an app and they don't use it for whatever reason. They don't get on with it, or they delete it, or they run out of space on the device or whatever, or they don't go back to it. So the 39% is the one I think we'd like to get higher. We'd like to see all of our tenants, actively using the app/portal. So we'll keep pushing for that. I think we're still quite ambitious that we can get as high as we can on that. But yeah, it's making a massive difference to us as a business, having the offering for our residents to use.
I think you're right. I think it is important to sort of consider that active users, because I think we've seen in the past a little bit of a varied definition of channel shift statistics, should you say. So yeah, is it a case of number of people registered, or is it a case of I think we've seen, going back a few years, sort of counting email conversations as sort of channel shift, where really what you want to be measuring is active usage, and therefore what you'd hope to expect off the back of that is maybe a sort of drop in the day-to-day repeatable, potentially avoidable inquiries over the phone or face-to-face. Or I wonder if have you seen any correlation around that? You sort of hearing from the contact team around lesser sort of avoidable inquiries over the phone, or has it just stayed the same and those inquiries have maybe got a little bit more complex because some of those simpler ones are being done online?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture, really. Yes, some of the inquiries have changed from what I can hear, and they're still very busy on there on the non-digital channels. The phones are still quite busy. I mean, for example, the 28% repairs reported online was a bit of a surprise to me when I was looking at the stats here, because if someone would have asked me, I would have probably guessed it was the other way around, because our stance as a company is we're pushing people to report repairs digitally. That's the first thing. If someone rings up, we say, do you know you can report your repair online, however you got the app. But yet we're still getting a high percentage there, 72% of people who are still, regardless of that, still reporting things in a non-digital way. So still quite a bit of work to go for us. But I think our ethos now, our stance is right, and we just got to keep pushing with it.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that what you mentioned in terms of, because quite often we'll be asked about these stats as obviously the provider, in terms of the solutions which we can offer, and how far have you managed to take your client's channel shift. But I think you're right. It's more than just obviously you can have the best sort of solution in the world and all the functions and features out there, but I think your point around having that sort of company shared outlook of looking to drive people down that route as much as possible, from the comms team through to people who are speaking to customers day to day or even visiting them, I think is a really important point, which is going to contribute, I suppose, to the figures overall, isn't it? But in terms of how that's sort of grown over the years, and the fact that the app itself was launched, I think, late September, so 7 to 8 months ago, 2.5 thousand downloads already, with approximately, 8,000 homes, I think is a great start. And I think as and when these new pieces of functionality we'll talk about shortly will be released, it's only going to continue to improve, I suppose, over time, and obviously as customer expectations sort of evolve over time as well. But no, it's an interesting one. And thank you for sharing those results as well. We pop in a little bit of a quote from one of Adam's colleagues, Rich, who will be joining us at the Housing 23 next week, in terms of just sort of the age of customers, as sort of Rich finds it, people looking to transact online, and the whole sort of digital push from Housing Solutions is taking the organisation very much, it's taking sort of strides towards that, I suppose. And I suppose obviously it wouldn't be a webinar without a nice quote from a client on there as well. But yeah, if anyone is at Housing next week, come along to Jenny's talk with Rich as well to hear a little bit more from him. But I suppose we've kind of touched upon so far, Adam, the apps as a whole, a little bit of background, relationship between Prodo and Housing Solutions, and also the app itself. In terms of what we have delivered so far and what might happen next, we've put a couple on the screen around, kind of touched upon a little bit before, that we've explored AI to some extent. But is there anything on here in terms of potential development roadmaps you wanted to elaborate on, or also, I suppose the other question would be, how do you guys go about defining requirements and also prioritizing what you might look to do next on these sorts of platforms? That might be the better question.
Yeah, we do have an internal kind of roadmap, and as I touched on before, it's important for us that we're not just looking at it just the app. We're looking at it in a broad context. So on our roadmap, we do look at things like our website, for example, which we're currently kind of in the process of upgrading, and how that fits in, and the functionality that we offer across them, and sometimes duplicating functionality across platforms and sometimes not. And we get that information from our customers, as well as staff and kind of working groups like that. That's where we get it from. But yeah, some really exciting things that we've got planned. I think to kind of, if I had to put it in one statement, kind of where we want to get to, we want to be end-to-end digital, really. So that's from Mr. Miggins wanting to be a tenant. He literally doesn't have to come in the office. He can do everything online, tenancy agreements, documents like that, which are previously paper documents, all of it done online, right the way through estate inspections, kind of tenancy visits, all the functionality, rent repairs, to the point of him perhaps leaving, even the full end process. So end-to-end digital is where we want to get to. And along the way, offer lots of cool things. We're more than happy to look at all the kind of AI stuff, which is very on trend at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And stick our toes in the water of a few things. I mean, it's, as you said previously, it's important to be agile and have a partner that is able to try things and not be afraid that things might not work. As sometimes they don't, but some things do work very well. So it's great to have a partner that's not afraid to do things like that.
Great stuff. No, it is a really exciting one, to be fair, certainly around the AI side of things. But yeah, you're right. And we talk quite a lot about this generally around digitizing self-service. I think probably, you're right. The focus over the last few years has been on digitizing that sort of post-application tenancy experience, hasn't it? Which gives you the functions of maybe the most interesting or maybe most costly or important processes around repairs and rent and things. They're sort of the two we tend to talk about a lot, but it still means that you're having to convert those people, or who are existing customers who aren't digital users, I suppose, already. Whereas you touched upon the sort of tenant onboarding and application, applying for a home, and just sort of that end-to-end customer journey, you kind of seamlessly move through then, aren't you? So it begins digital, and then you go into probably manage your tenancy digital, which leaves less. I suppose that batch of customers gets smaller over time to convert to digital users, isn't it? Which I suppose is quite interesting. But yeah, the staff access one's quite an interesting one. Is there anything in particular from a staff access layer that you were hoping to capture on the digital estate?
Well, we're currently working on bits and pieces. We have a staff portal as well, which is quite useful in terms of staff access at the minute. But back end kind of stuff, yeah, it'd be good to have probably as we develop things a bit more access for our internal staff to work on the app.
Great stuff. Okay, cool. Well, if anyone has any questions and they who's joined us today, just feel on anything on the sort of the screen or so far, just pop them into the chat and we can look to address those shortly. But no, thank you for that, Adam. I suppose a couple of key drivers around this. We kind of talked about a couple a little bit earlier, but from a key drivers and decision making around what new features might happen, is there anything in particular that you look for or look to gain from an internal exploratory session perspective, or prioritizing customer needs around this? How do you go about decision making around what the new features are and when you might do them?
Yeah, well, I think ideas initially, there's no such thing as a bad idea. I'm sure somebody once said that. I might have just made that up. But yeah, we get a lot of ideas from a lot of different places. Yeah, residents are normally relatively kind of basic functionality because, as I say, they want to pay their rent and repairs for the main.
Yeah.
So the more creative, more innovative kind of ideas that come, we find generally do come from kind of working groups, staff. And they're not all great. Some of them are really out there. Some of them are relatively basic. So we look at every idea that we get through, and then quite often they're linked to issues, and they can be quite kind of historic issues in the housing sector. Things like randomly estate inspections, for example, is a one traditionally that's got issues and challenges surrounding it. So we look at the processes around the issues and think how digital can improve them, and usually there's a more efficient way that you can do it using digital means. So that's a pattern that we see a lot.
Yeah, and that availability of data point, which is point 2 on the screen, is that presented any blockers to you guys in the past? It's sometimes something I hear when I'm talking to people who we're not currently working with around sort of preparing for digital implementation. A lack of certain pieces of data, or at least a lack of access to a combination of data, I suppose, is something which sometimes causes problems. Is that anything that you've experienced similar around that?
Not so much, really. I mean, we're pretty good. We're pretty hot on our data. Normally, if we're developing a specific feature, for example, for an app, we normally find that we've got good records of data for the non-digital version, perhaps, that we're looking to improve. But obviously, once you do develop something in a digital way, that those data points might change, and you might be looking at other things. And I think it's important not to get too hung up on data. It's useful, obviously, when you're developing things. But I think sometimes in the housing sector, certainly, we're not always looking at the right data. Everyone's very hung up on Housemark and comparing and being the best at a specific KPI when actually it's not always the best thing to look at. Sometimes you just need to step back and look at what your residents and your customer base actually want.
Yeah, it can be something which there's often quite a lot to it, isn't there? And if you I suppose if you're focusing a little bit too hard on it and it is presenting a bit of a blocker, it can present quite a significant delay in progressing digital projects, I suppose, isn't it? And that's another sort of theme of the book that our CEO Pippa talks about, in terms of taking some sort of action and making some change now is better than waiting to make sure that the environment is perfect to implement something into, when really you could have probably been making great progress as you've been waiting in the past. And I think data is sort of part of that. So that's interesting to say. Thank you for that, Adam. Just I suppose a quick note to say, if anyone is sort of interested in exploring apps further or wants to sort of discuss some specific need with us directly, then feel free to either pop us a form submission through on the website, connect with me on LinkedIn, or I think there might be a link to my diary in the chat pane, potentially from Liv as well. But yeah, is there anything in particular in the chat for us or for Adam, Liv, that you've seen that thought it might be worth raising before we come to finish?
We've got a few questions. So
Sure.
the first one was from Jonathan. Are there any GDPR considerations you took into account when developing your app?
Good question. Anything in particular that you've got on that, Adam?
One that springs to mind is when the initial spec that we had for the app, we were very keen on, I think you mentioned it in the slides there, on a message center, which would basically pull notes from open housing that our contact center staff had put in when they've been talking to a customer. And we quickly realized that that there might be some issues around that. So we kind of decided against that feature. So yeah, I think it's important just keep an eye on those kind of things. I think as long as your app is secure, you know, your authentication works well, so it's not open to abuse from that point of view. You normally could just keep an eye on it. I think when you're developing it, and normally someone raises something if there's something obvious.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think on top of that, Apple in particular have very stringent privacy and GDPR focus as well. So, you know, as you go through that approval process, there are specific policies to adhere to from them as well.
Yeah, it's important for us as a developer around that as well. So I suppose when we do incorporate or develop and implement these solutions, whether it be web-based or the app itself, from a data point of view, it's quite rare, or I can't think of any examples where we actually hold any customer data. It's always a case of going back to those integration points, and once we have sort of verified the user through that API integration, actually all we're kind of doing is surfacing the data from Housing Solutions' internal system. So that going back to that sort of security point, it's much more secure for us to do it that way rather than sort of capture and hold anything on our own databases somewhere. It's just a case of sort of authenticating someone and passing it through and then back again. Through the integration, really. Yeah.
The next one, also from Jonathan, for you, Adam, I think. Has the app helped free up staff to focus on other tasks?
Good question.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, people's roles change as things become digitized. So I guess, like, for example, our contact center is changing. So although they might not be on the phones, yeah, they can now be doing other things, answering web chats, for example. But there's always jobs to be done. There's always work to be found, isn't there? But yeah, I guess they have a bit more free time to do the more digital stuff now.
Yeah, that's good. We tend to hear, we've heard some feedback in the past, at least, that once we have, I suppose, driven towards that increased digital adoption, it's kind of helped certain members of certain internal teams actually do the job that they thought they were going to end up doing, and sort of that less so of the admin side of things, of the very, very repeatable and avoidable inquiries. So hopefully that'll be the case for you guys too, in terms of your teams.
We've got time probably for a couple more. So how do you register or validate users to access the app to ensure they are valid tenants?
Good question. Do you want that one, Adam?
Yeah. So when someone's registering for our app, I'm trying to think now. I think they use their name, date of birth, tenancy reference, and I think that might be it. There might be three off. There might be another one, but yeah, and that's how it validates. It goes back to open housing and validates them and lets them create an account. And then when they're signing in and out every time, as I say, they can use the face recognition type thing, the fingerprint recognition, or its username and password, and that gets them in. And if they get locked out, you know, we internally are normally deal with lockouts and things like that. Keeps them busy.
So it's that finding that match of a specific customer via your internal system first, I suppose, that first step. Right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then probably one more. How are customers involved in development of the app?
Yeah, we run focus groups and stuff when we're developing bits and pieces. Yeah, and we've got a decent, probably similar to some of the other people on the chat here, decent kind of working group of residents who like to get involved. It's usually similar demographic, as everyone will probably be familiar with, but they always want to feed in and help us. And if they don't come up with initial ideas, because as I said previously, they quite often just want the basic things to work well. if not, and we can at least bring the more exotic ideas to them and get their feedback from them, which is always interesting to see.
Is it usually that ideas stage where you bring them in, Adam? Because we've seen it done a few ways in the past, I suppose, when we've run customer focus groups with customers, either at that very early scoping stage and sort of ideas generation and maybe help to prioritize things, but also maybe the design phase or even sort of at times testing phase. Well, do you usually sort of include that at the beginning in terms of planning, do you, to get the customer focus groups involved?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely more as you brainstorm on the initial concept of what you want the app to do or how you want it to look.
Yeah.
And obviously there's other mechanisms now for gathering feedback, isn't there? Like reviews on the App Store, for example. We take those kind of basic things into account.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Is there a few more livers there, but we haven't got time to get to those? Is that what you're saying?
We have
So
one
if not,
more,
we can-
which was around, was the app developed to be truly native using something like Swift or something like React Native?
Good question. It is a truly native app. Yeah. So rather than something like an app wrapper or anything that may sort of try to come across as an app-like experience or have a presence in the App Store, but then actually present a website, it is a native application which is compatible with both iOS and Android. Yeah, a good question.
We answered them all now.
Oh, great stuff. Okay, I was going to say we'll follow up with the ones we haven't done, but that's very good. Just before we do finish, you may have seen some comments on this from us already, and I've kind of touched upon it a couple of times as we've been speaking, but we will be exhibiting once more at Housing 23 next week. So the caravan is being cleaned tomorrow, and then we're transporting it on Saturday. Me, Jenny, Liv, and Joe, and also Danny here is going to be doing some filming for us. We'll be heading over, and we're there for pretty much the entire week. So feel free, if you are around, pop over, look out for the shiny caravan somewhere in the middle. We will have demos going on. We'll also be capturing data for the second iteration of our book on channel shifts. There'll be a survey on the iPad as well. And then we also have a couple of talks. So as I say, Rich from Housing Solutions is going to be joining Jenny on the Tuesday morning. I'll be running one with Guy Colbert from Live Housing Group about the collaborative consultancy and digital roadmap planning as well. So yeah, if you are there, please do feel free to come and say hello. We will be there for the entire time. And yeah, hopefully some of you will be there and we'll see you there for a coffee. But I suppose, yeah, just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us again today. We will, and also to yourself, Adam, for taking the time to support and join us and give your take on the insights in the project as far, and also talk about the results as well. Really much appreciate it. It's great to hear those things from someone directly like yourself, rather than sort of just us anecdotally talking about these things. So that's very helpful. So thank you for joining. We will have our next Hive at the end of July 27th, which will be about customer access to building safety and maintenance information, which we've digitized with Thrive Homes as well. They will be joining us, which is something which is one of Joe's clients. So thank you again once more. What was that, Joe?
Excited to talk about that on the next Hive.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Look forward to it. But yeah, thanks again, guys. We'll invite you to the next one. Follow up with the video when we can. Hopefully we'll see you next week, and following that, the next Housing Hive on 27th. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.